So today is actually Valentine's Day,
世
right?
间所有的相遇都是久别重
It's
逢。
interesting that it's also very close to the Chinese New Year, right? So we have to keep producing, right? I have talked for a bit, right? I think in the kitchen got a couple of days ago and I forgot to upload it. So I'll add a bit more. The topic is forensic medicine, right? So it is part of the RDL from MaicroDoctor. So research, design, development, building the product. You need lawyering to navigate the regulatory compliance part, healthcare, medical research, especially forensic, has very rigorous processes, procedures, right? You have to be really evidence grounded. That's why we cut into this domain, right? And it is very scientific. At the same time, it's very legal based. It has the urgent need. You need to determine the cause of the damage, right? And the wound. And a lot of medical domain expertise required, as well as the legal expertise. So the passion to provide justice, right? The social aspect is also pretty kind of motivating, right? So now, so the guidelines for the visual assessment is more like objective principles for evaluating the impairment, injury, and disability, right? So clinical medicine, so transition from kind of subjective claims to objective verdict, which could be used in a court of law, right? So the designing part of the MaicroDoctor really is to integrate the modern medicine, if you will, right? The medicine we know for the past couple hundred years, right? To Chinese medicine, right? It's more traditional. Yeah, traditional medicine, not only Chinese, but many other cultures has it, but by far it is most proven and still in use, very vibrant in China, right? Although it's kind of villainized in the West, probably, but that's fine. They all have a few couple hundred years of fame. Essentially, you take a perspective, 1,000 years, and you can see it's one is the continuation, the other, right? Combination, complementary somehow. The way we do it, you have to be honest, right? You have to be physically realistic, solve the problem, if you will, right? The Chinese medicine is more pro-human, right? It's holistic. But again, there's a lot of hearsay kind of things, right? Some like lung disease, not very good at it, right? They have their basis, which is obviously need to modernize it, right? Cannot just dwell on the philosophical basis. Right? But again, it's very holistic, very pro-human. Even the eyes, if you look at it. Actually, let me get next time maybe the way that we traditionally depict eyes is pretty revealing, right? Before we have what we call scientific method, they already very much developed in terms of the surgery and the eyes and brains, right? I think at least couple thousand years ago. But archaeologically, there are more and more evidence. But again, it just become a system. There's so many things you need to modernize, you need to revitalize. But again, you don't throw out the good part and then swap in what we call the modern science, right? whatever the modern doesn't mean is better. You cannot take the linear historical involvement, like evolution is always better than the old times. Not really. Right? I mean, it's a cider cake. Think about the modernization, industrialization. Yeah, produced immense level of flourished, plentiful kind of world. But again, at the same time, it also destroy a lot of natural habitat. Right? Did it make our life better? Of course, slowly. But do we kind of become happier, live in a more, lovable justice, everybody happy? No, not really. So why? So there's a debate, right? He's always had to take a more, I would say, physical approach, assess the reality and not the thing you imagine, not you read from propaganda, especially when it comes down to forensic medicines, right? You're facing life and death, right? You're facing the crimes, justice, right? You need investigation. You absolutely need evidence grounded. You need scientific, anything you can even imagine that you can have, accumulate, use it, tools, whatever method, right? Cannot be based on hearsay, right? Cannot be just subjective claim. But of course, any sort of objective verdicts is subjective as well, right? That's why we need court of law, right? We need lawyering, right? So, the intuitive human experience, right? That insight, sometimes, they call it, doesn't matter, sixth sense, whatever that is, right? It's based on long time practice in the field, right? But it cannot base on that, right? Give you an insight, but the systematic approach that we try to design the product, right? So now, the anatomy, the vision, we all know that, right? It's the brain who actually works with the eyeballs, right? Capture it, like the light is the spectrum. Right? It's only a very narrow part able to capture it by the eyes, right? Right? There are, it's really thinking of the product design, the software is more computing part, hardware is more physical, right? The neural pathway, right? How you process these optics, right? How you capture the light, right? And so we've all been through this, right? You look at it, your eyesight, where you are, right? You have to quantify that, right? There's a particular metric, a grading system, determine what is blind, right? So, like, what is deaf, right? What is healthy, right? So this is where it's fascinating, right? And the clinical goal, restore fast corrective vision, right? WHO in 1973 had an old standard, right? The 5-grade vision, right? Now in 2003, they have a new 6-grade system. That's okay. Just different, different scale, right? The best corrective, you try to improve the vision, right? The best corrective vision ignores the patient's daily struggle, but daily living standards are vulnerable to exaggeration, right? Forensic analysis must bridge the gap. Bridging the subjective to objective. Which one is real? Every day the living with it is more real, right? You cannot ignore that. Not everybody live in a clinic, okay? So when you say improvement, you have to know what you mean. Right? The visual field calculation, efficiency equation, right? So those getting slightly more technical, right? The forensic challenge. Yeah, you have to detect deception. It's not easy, right? Even memory could lie, right? Let alone your vision. Okay. So we're going to get into the nose as well, like the smells, the sense, the sensation. How do you quantify that? How do you even describe that? Everybody have a different description. Pseudo-blindness or behavioral indicator of malignant, is that malignant? I don't know how to pronounce it. The blind walk. Kind of avoid obstacles too well. When we become old, kind of the eyesight is kind of blurred. Right? Sometimes you can see a bit farther away, But again, the blind is not just the natural kind of decaying of your eyes. Right? Is your brain, is your eyes? I don't know. Maybe that. But you make up a lot of things without even knowing that. Right? Yeah, you intentionally deceptive, right? Or you lying? Not really. Your eyes are lying. Right? It's not language. It's systematically. It's natural, right? So pseudo blindness, right? The total blindness, right? It started from perception, but processing is in your brain, right? The whole system give you a vision, right? Simulated laws. That's why blind can see if you put Neuralink chips inside the brain. Probably, right? There are many other ways to recover that as well, or make it at least slow it down, right? Make it better, right? But it's very hard to quantify, to measure. Mostly, either you're exaggerating the partial loss, or you ignore the decaying of that systematic acute needs of vision, right? How sharp, right? So, in any case, it's very inconsistent in many ways, right? Now the prism shift, the reading bar, okay, the distance trick, there are a lot of combination of those, right? The objective evidence, the physical inspection, the functional claims, mismatched structural defects, right? Same thing like you take a historical view, you look at what history itself, some scholars think that it's a girl that you can dress whatever you like. No, really. You have, yeah, you can, I read some history books, right? Especially in the forensic part, right? Or, any medical books, right? Appears to me that imagine, right? Because I don't really, the more you dig into it, the more you think, physically it's impossible. It doesn't add up, right? Archaeologically, it doesn't add up. We use scientific method to investigate, to measure, to quantify. It's hard to lie in a physical level, right? You can make up things, but physically it doesn't add up. Right? The climate changes, right? There's so many material, right? Bacteria, right? You can use different methods to test it, right? The environment, the climate, right? The geological evidence, the archaeological evidence, artifact, everything has to match up. You can lie in a single plot as if it's epic hero kind of whatever you can imagine. Just imagine history. It's not real, right? Same thing here, right? Like, take example like how you look at things. You need to start from perception. It's very physical, right? But again, you get into your brain, you could imagine it, right? You can make up a lot of things that you didn't see, or you saw everything that you didn't even know, but they are there. Okay. Once the scientific method advances, you see, right? The X-ray, right? Doesn't mean they don't exist. But when you try to make up the history, you don't know that, right? Like, you don't know that they can discover using modern method. You just tell them a story, think that as if everybody believed in it, maybe for a few hundred years, maybe even 1,000 years. But again, they will discover that's a lie, right? Because it doesn't add up physically. Okay, so the more you get into that, it's more fascinating. That that's what we call science. Science is question. Ours don't blindly believe in, right? This blindness, a pseudo blindness, not only exists in your eyes, right? Not only forensic medicine, but in terms of the, the history, especially history of medicine. Right? A lot of lies, frankly speaking. Right? It's not good because you have to clearly see the problem, then propose instead of treatment, then actually solve the problem, right? Lie doesn't help you much. Maybe give you like, what do you call it? A candy, right? A band-aid, right? For a little while. But eventually it still exists, right? I forgot the word, in my memories. Early morning, I just got up, said I didn't, let me push it over, right? So what is it? The objective evidence. Okay. What is the objective evidence? Optical coherence, right? OCT, optical biopsy. Okay. Forensic value, atrophy takes time. Okay. You can determine the injury, the wound is old or new. I spend a lot of time studying the wound. It's fascinating, right? Sometimes, the microbes don't lie because they don't know how to, but they physically tell you, right, what happened, right? Okay, there's, ultrasound. I will know that, right? So, optical canal fracture, right? And X-ray, right? Previously you could lie, but now you cannot, right? You see that so vivid, right? Many other medical methods will allow us to see through the lies, right? Hey, here's the verdict. Principle of consistency. The golden rule, function must equal structure. Okay? Subjective function charts and fields, the objective structure, OCT, CT exam, right? They have to add up, they have to match, right? Because you can, confirmed injury, malingering, the cortical bluntness, right? The claim is blunt, right? Evidence that eyes is normal, but MRI shows it's brain that cannot process it, right? So total bluntness evidence, normal pupil reflective read-through prism, like verdict, pseudo bluntness, not really, right? Confirmed injury, OCT shows nerve atrophy, right? The nerve is broken, right? That's valid. Right? Now, calculating the impairment rating, right? The forensic investigator, the protocol, right? The claim, right? What is the history? What is the reported traceable loss? Preliminary check, examine, the basics, behavior, consistent check. Take a few more steps, take different approaches. Subjective testing, right? Look at it all played together. Objective verification, then you get the rating. Right? That's called a scientific method. Right? The justice through science. That's what I like. That's what MaicroDoctor is supposed to do, right? Taking this as the springboard, really try to come down and integrate the modern medicine to the traditional more Chinese medicine, right? So they all have their strengths. I'm not a doctor, so I cannot pretend that, but at least I have sufficient business product design knowledge. Need to employ the true experts to come together in partnership. I cannot do all the things myself, right? But again, it's a need. It's a huge market, say that, especially in AI and robotic era. We must be able to embrace the power, right? For the right cause, right? For the high purpose we set for ourselves. I'll add what I have been through a couple of days ago. Then we'll kind of upload it. We'll continue tomorrow, just scratching the surface. Right? We've done quite a few other sessions. I'll revamp that and see how we can kind of make it a usable terms of the ideal phase for MaicroDoctor. All right, so we try to dive into the investigation of the medicine part, right? Forensic. So this is a generated image, right? It's not really perfect, is it? But what it is about is based on the I Ching and Chinese medicine, right? What it means is really kind of how the life science kind of originated. Okay, we put it in a perspective. The robotics, right? You might heard of the Neuralink, right? That's from Elon Musk, but Bill Gates and others like Jeff Bezos, right, from Amazon, the boss there used to be. They have a different approach, less invasive. However, it's kind of same thing, right? They call what is the name? I can't find it. It's really like the administer a small kind of capsule or little robot, right? Very small, tiny one, right, into your veins, and then gradually kind of propel it to your brain cells and integrate with your cells, and same thing like the Neuralink, they directly do a sort of open skull surgery, right? And they eventually become, how do you say that? Well, make the blind see or something like that, right? Miracles, and essentially to serve the bandwidth, like human eyes and communications or words, right? Kind of limited and slow, right? So directly integrate the silicon to the biological nerves, right, and the brain cells, right, and collect those electronic or biological chemical signals there, right? Majorly electronic, I would say that, right? Digitize it. It's kind of integration of biology and silicon, right? And that is sort of very rudimentary kind of a layman view, right? But essentially, that's what it is, right? But if we put this in perspective, right, the philosophical roots of healing, right? Does it really kind of what is really like the Neuralink and new robotic or AR way of biological silicon integration supposed to achieve, right? We might need to pause a bit and think through, right? And seeing this in the context of trying to put together, it's one of my research project, right? I try to put together MaicroDoctor, as I say. It's mostly from the Chinese medicine part, right? Because there are a lot of regulations in the Western medicine. Yeah, we're going to target the same thing, healing and healthcare, enhance the human, and there are a lot of problems, if you will. I don't want to call it diseases, right? Not purely like within the domain of the Western medicine, right? It's quite limited. Of course, it's vast enough. It's really very comprehensive already, right? Like surgery, invasive kind of treatment, this pill, that pill, this medicine, that medicine. It's quite a lot, right? And I'm not expert there, but I think, pretty good at Chinese medicine side. It's the same thing, right? But they just taking different approaches. The problem they solve, I would say Western medicine is way more effective, right? But have some side effect, right? The Chinese medicine is more kind of holistic in terms of how you target a human life, not just a body, right? Or how many bones, which muscle, right? What veins, heart, liver stuff, right? In thinking of the heart and liver, in the Chinese medicine, it's more of a system rather than just an organ, right? So that's really traditionally based in the astrology, right? For example, heart. Heart is one of the galaxy, if you will, or stars, a few stars, big stars, right? Like a small solar system. Traditionally, that's part of the east part of the six of them, right? That's where the I Ching is originally from, right? I think it is one of them is called heart, right? Heart is like it's a small galaxy, if you will, right? Maybe solar system, of course, bigger than solar system for sure, right? So that is heart, okay? And I'm not sure how kind of weird if you're not have any background in the I Ching or Chinese culture, right? But again, what I'm trying to link together is the astronomy, right? And it's medicine and philosophy, life science, because what China believe, right? This is where the life is from, right? And how mutate or evolve, however, right? And also how we can respect humanity, right? And for what it is, right? It's kind of divine, right? They certainly don't believe there's some sort of miracle created or something, right? But it's not just as the evolution kind of theory saying, well, it's coming from monkeys. No, that's not a Chinese theory, right? Therefore, you cannot treat it like a monkey, right? But in any case, it's quite involved. What we try to say from the business perspective, if I'm doing a lot of research, if I produce a MaicroDoctor, so what it's supposed to be, it is certainly kind of unification of the Western medicine, Chinese medicine, but it's more focused on the life science itself, right? That's what AI is really good, can provide assistance for the humans, right? That kind of calculative power, that kind of thinking, reasoning is way beyond human intelligence, right? Machine intelligence or artificial intelligence is just what it's good for, right? In my opinion. And so you look at this diagram, right? I Ching and medicine share the same origin, right? That's what we call the same origin, right? So I meaning I Ching, I also medicine, right? So the different application, like in astrology, you see all the stars, but in the person, that's same thing, like a little universe, right? That's how it's not all just imagination or kind of weird kind of theory. No, they actually make it work, right? Even today, right? And I strongly believe beyond the phase of AI and robotics, right? The mostly applicable push forward, accelerating the Western medicine kind of thing, right? Beyond that, once you exhaust those means, you probably have to look into a deeper roots, and that's where you're going to pay more attention to the Chinese medicine. They have different approach. It's probably more rudimentary. One side of it is probably more kind of superior than what the Western medicine try to achieve. It is not that they don't have it, but they don't emphasize that. Take it apart. They have surgery as well. Especially today, the Western medicine in China is probably way more prevalent mainstream than the Chinese medicine. But again, they use that, for example, in the latest COVID-19, right? The Chinese medicine performed a really critical role, right, to recover. Think about 1.4 billion people, right? If you all use the Western medicine with that kind of side effect, it could create a healthcare disaster, right? But they successfully recovered so smoothly and successfully. Tells you something, right? You cannot be a master doctor without knowing that's true, right? I'm not sure if you understand it. It's from one of the legendary doctor, Sun Simiao. I think he lived up to like 140 or some years old, right? And he's a doctor, right? So knows it well, right? Sun Simiao. That's I believe, right? It is why I mention it, right? When I create the product called MaicroDoctor, right? That's what it means, right? Of course, it performs Western medicine, healthcare, general practitioner kind of a job, right? Nursing, but in Chinese approach to the medicine, to the healthcare, to life science, as a whole, is quite distinctively kind of, in my opinion, is more pro-life, right? But in any case, let's see how the market is going to receive it, right? It's still in the research and design phase, but just not a lot of regulations you have to dance around. As long as you can heal, as long as you can improve the health, you have a lot of ways to practice it, right? That is why I chosen that. But gradually, we're going to embrace a lot more healthcare. Depends on where we are, right? And so I'm actually sitting in the kitchen, right? Try to go through so many material, right? I don't have much time, so bear with me. It's not the best view or best video, right? But the content, right? If you love it, if it is find it kind of beneficial. Otherwise, just skip it, right? So, by the way, I'm going to put together. It's not a lecture, right? Just lead you through about I Ching and Chinese medicine, right? And also the Western medicine side. I'm not an expert there, right? But the family members, many of them are practitioners, right? And some sort of practitioners, right? So not totally stranger. So three meanings of that, right? Oh, it's simple, simplicity. That's why I developed the framework as I put forward the I Ching kind of framework as the business architecture. Simply 6 stages or 6 layers, one on top of the other, right? I'm going to invite all those players, right, into their, I think, the respective places or stages, right? I have spent some time. I'm not going to iterate every episode, right? But the second is more like change, right? Variability. You need to blend in, weave in, like where we live in. We live in a small planet, by the way, right? In a solar kind of system, but we're a little tiny thing, right? On the arms, I think it's left arm or right arm, forgot it, the Milky Way, right? Isn't it? We're not even in the center, right? In the center, probably the black hole or something, right? So the third one is Wu Yi, meaning something consistent, constancy, right? They don't really change. What do you mean by that? Well, we mean like eventually, if you believe in science, right, the Earth will eventually just disappear, right? Same as the solar system, right? And they all have a life cycle, right? Like humans, right? The planet, the stars, and constellations and all these galaxies, right? The universe itself, they have a life cycle. It's like, oh, in a winter, kind of, we stay inside, cold, right? And snow in the sun, in the spring, warm up, and the river float again. The birds come out, the flowers, and we're gonna go out as human, right? Our body change, right? Then gradually there are a lot of rains, the gardens come out, the parks, the agriculture, that's the season. You can see that birds, flowers, everything in the spring, and then gradually summer, right? Become the temperature, right? Climb up, and naturally, right? More water, right? More sunshine, and you enjoy that for the summer, hot few days, right? And some months, right? Depends on where you are, and then gradually winding down a little bit, right? You're going to see the fruits come out, right? Pollination, doesn't matter it's bee or bird, whatever that is, or people, you see the fruits eventually being harvested, doesn't matter it's the crops or the fruits or any other thing. They all have a life cycle. Human as well, right? When you get age of marriage, really, my suggestion, get married and have some children, right? That's a natural life cycle, right? And then you got into the fall, autumn season, right? The leaves falling down, right? The cooling down and everything kind of shutting down, right? And then you got in winter again, right? So some gonna hibernate, some are gonna stay inside and wait for the next cycle, right? Roughly, okay? Same thing, right? It's like per human being. We're born and we enjoy the childhood and go to kindergartens and then school. We're so young, right? Adolescents become a young man, young girl, right? Then eventually get married and have a family and then have children. But we'll grow, right? Our body will decay, right? Our health will sometimes get into trouble, right? Nowadays, we're lucky to have the modern healthcare and medical science, right? And lifespans like 80s or more, right? In Canada, US, and China, and some other countries, Hong Kong, Europe used to be good. I'm not sure how it is now, right? Maybe still good, like in Switzerland. They used to be really good, right? But I don't know now. I've not been there for a while, right? But what I'm trying to say is that it is like two sides of the same coin, right? The healthy and some sort of disease, or according to the pathology, right? There's differentiation between these terms, right? You get, I don't know if unhealthy is a word, the degree, right? You're gonna get into problems, right? Your organs, your eyes, your size. If you remember Shakespeare, have that, famous parables, right? You walk with a cane, right? You're kind of old, right? It's a life cycle, right? It's kind of natural, right? But oh yeah, it's so primitive, so basic. Well, yeah, I mean it is, but that's what we mean by constancy, right? Those cycles is hard to change, right? We'll all go through that cycle. The whole planet eventually will go, right? That's why sometimes we have to think about, what is this AI and robotics really helping us become multiplanetary kind of civilization, or really enhance our life, make us live forever. I don't know if that's a good thing, but the argument enhancement, propel the medical research, speed it up, right? So all the problems, right? Have all the medicine we ever need, fix all the diseases, right? Cure all the germs. I don't know if it's a good thing or not, right? But eventually, that's not the Chinese philosophy, right? You cannot really do that, right? You're not supposed to do that, and they're there for a reason, right? It's like the disease or pathogens are there for a reason, right? They're also part of the life, right? They are alive, either way, right? If you change or shifting the definition slightly, right? You know, and any case, that's why in the framework, as I try to demonstrate to you, on the left hand is lift, on the right hand is more like a wall, right? Like wall is required, you know. It's not just hugging and kiss, you know, have a good shaking hand and then you solve the problem. No, many times you need wall, right? It's a necessity. Same thing, like diseases, pathology, right? It's also a natural part, right? Human will die, you know. It's also kind of, there's nothing really strange about it. That's where that kind of, you think it is philosophical? Well, it makes it so practical. That is why, you know, in my opinion, it is proven, right? Ecologically, in the molecule side, they've done a lot of, you know, genome tests, or kind of medical labs, right? They have a lot of projects worldwide under the WHO, right? It is actually proving a lot of stuff, right? It is. I don't know if people think differently, but given 5,000 years history or more, right, in China, right, the Chinese medicine been practiced some, you know, many thousand years. It's not just a natural health healing kind of way, right? It's very primitive. No, way more sophisticated than you really can probably can guess, right? In many aspects, it's way more sound approach, a more cohesive pro-life kind of approach, right? But in the case, right, it's been put in this back burner for a reason, right? The modern medicine, the Western medicine, as we call it, right, in a driver's seat, is also for a good reason, right? But I believe you also need to not just Chinese medicine. Many other cultures have their own medicine as well, right? You need to learn from and synthesize, put together, right? Given the push or empowerment from AI and robotics, right? Maybe we can, you know, you can think it any way you like, right? Augment or make the Western or modern medicine better, right? Why not, right? It's not like who is good, who is bad. They're all good, right? But they have to, even star players, they have to, you know, play together as a team, right? Help each other, right? Augment each other, right? Stimulate each other in a way, right? So the simplicity don't just you know say, oh, this is simple, right? But it means you simplify the whole the complexity of the system. You don't lose that direction, right? You cannot just get into a little, like what we say today, right? Little nitty gritty kind of details and locked in there forever, right? It's good to be fastidious about it, but at the same time, if you forgot where you're from, like what humans are, you know, what life is for, right? If you lose that humanity, right, you might heard of the island kind of thing, right? It's not never my focus, but you know, just disgusting, right? So if you do that, meaning somewhere something wrong, right? As a civilization, you might need to rectify that. That's also called part of the healing, right? It's also simple, right? But again, why people commit that kind of things? You know, probably they missed, lost, and they forgot the simple principles, right? Again, so the terminology they call qi or whatever, yin yang, and that's beyond us, right? I'm going to provide some sort of a light-hearted sort of. I'm going to talk through, you know, I Ching and Chinese medicine, but just for the product research and development, right? It's really building up the MaicroDoctor, the line of products of mine, right? It's not really for teaching you or lecture you. There are plenty of books. So many universities you can go to online. There are billions of material, right? You don't need to come to me for that, right? In the middle, 变异, variability, right? The universe is then constant motion. Well, that's why the book of I Ching called the Book of Change, right? I don't know. I just kind of take it for granted everybody knows it, but doesn't mean that everybody actually knows it, right? So that's where it is known in the West, but it's a very bad translation, right? That's not really what I Ching is for. Okay, I Ching again is originated from astrology, right? Astronomy, if you will. So life is motion, stasis is death. Metabolism of energy, right? In the framework, if you recall, in the bottom layer, there are elements and energy, right? I call it science, but it's many ways to divide and to look at the same thing. I just try to be simple, right? So essentially on the bottom will be elements like silver, gold, and copper, rare earths, or any other. If you look at the periodical table, there's many of them. That's what the world is really reduced to the atom level, right? And you know how that nuclei and the standard particles model, right? If you got into quantum physics, right, how many different elements there, particles there, they all make up the nucleus and elements, how they interact with each other, it's very basic in my opinion, right? But you need to have the fundamental of the physics, the chemistry, then you have biology, right? You have mathematics for sure, right? Then you have the world build up. That's what today, like for example, they can, what is a paper, right? A fabric is very thin, right? But now they can use some of the wool, or wool is kind of they need a very high temperature, right, to make it melt, right? So, but in any case, they can just have how thin it is, but just a couple of atoms, right? That's how thin it is, right? They can make you make a robot like eyeballs, right? You can use it, right? You can use it put on the face like a skin layer. It's so thin, right? You don't even notice it, but actually so useful, so functionally brilliant, right? But unfortunately, you might have to do it in a space station, right? In this the laboratory part of it. I'm sorry. Yeah, well, I'm just talking through that, right? So that's what variability is about, right? Energy. Well, did I say something wrong? Oh, why I'm sneezing. In any case, the second layer is more of I call it infrastructure information, right? I don't want to explain too much, but I believe information is a fundamental part of the reality, like what I Ching tells you right away, right? Qi, right? The information, not just purely energy, right? And I don't know who is coming first or the other, one or the other, right? And like matter E equals MC2 or something, but the information and energy, they have a equation as well, right? I don't know who discovered that, but essentially it's not as well we just talked there's some communication. No, it's not like that, right? You might heard it's not proven, not everybody agree, like string theory or kind of stuff, right? But in any case, that's beyond our point. We're doing the business product. We're not trying to get into the theoretical science, right? But in any case, those interesting stuff, right? If you think of, I Ching, right? It's going to help you to think more in depth, right? That's why we need to touch the roots, right? It's kind of abstract. Let me see if I can find anywhere that. Again, it's not the best that I produced, right? It's kind of generated, right? Let's use it to illustrate the point, right? So in the bottom, there are elements and energy, right? We all know that very much the essence of the basics, right? Second is the infrastructure. It emitted the information. I think it is, maybe kind of old version, right? Then the third layer, obviously, there are chips, as you know, right? The foundation of the AI, the then the compute, right, and cloud, right. Then fourth layer is more of the model, and and then that's where the product sits, macro brain and macro hearts, right. Layer 5 are the AI agents, right? AI applications, enterprise AI, whatever you call it, right? And on the top of those, that's what I focus on, the solvent robotics and physical AI, some AI devices, right? So another view, as I put it, right, in the bottom be science, right? Then in second is more technology, right? And the number 3 going up be engineering, right? It's just another way of looking at the same thing to keep it simple, right? Number 4, application. Number 4 is more of the operating system, but if you put it together, it's based on I Ching, right? And then number 5 up is the application. Number 6, the robotics, right? So, there are many different ways of looking at the same thing. I just try to make it a kind of simple, right? So this is another one, right? It's the different depictions, right? As you see, the elements in layer 1 in the bottom, right? Energy, silver, rare earth energy, electricity, right? Whatever you can dig out from the earth, but don't limit yourself in the earth, right? You could go to the deep space and get it, the planet map, right? That's why AI and robotics eventually will get us to up to the deep space, right? The second is again the infrastructure, logistics, shaping, some movement, like money rails, different how you govern, right? It's all gut rails, right? As well. Number 3, obviously the chips and compute, right? Silicon, GPU, TPU, many of those. Number 4 again is the operating system, if you will, the multimodal AI enterprise part of the world models, right? And number 5 is more the editing AI, different ways AI agent or AI enterprise AI application. Number 6 is physical AI devices, solving robotics. That's what I'm focused on, but really starting from 4, 5, 6. Okay, that's my product research and design is focused on. I mean, especially the robotics side. Here's another view, right? Again, same thing, right? I'm just trying to having fun, engage whoever. We'll have different tastes, different perception, right? The forensics, you look at it, right? The compliance, blockchains analysis there is quite essential, right? So the agent, obviously, right, is you have to be under that supervision. You have to make sure that you function within some framework, right? And there are different ways, right? What I try to say, right? You probably need to find different ways, physical AI, the Internet of Money, ontological balance, right? That's where my kind of product can focus on, right? Yeah, on the top is the paper I put it together for the macro banker side. It's more like a physical AI and robotics, right? So for the workforce side. Yeah, done a lot of research, right? As you can see, right? So many material through civilizations, right? Not only Chinese civilization, there are many others, right? But again, it's been survived so far for a reason, right? That reason is really I Ching, right? That's the long route, okay? So, like, you have to, if I were you, try to get out the shell that you might be lock your mind in, right? To really touch that root, okay? Be a little more open-minded, right? May not, you don't have to believe in it, but at least, others may strongly kind of embracing it for good reasons, right? And because it's actually been there for a while, it works, right? Even in a modern, like Huawei, right? and Chinese medicine is still very good, right? Very strong there, and hopefully, right? My intention is to benefit, right? And I try to Chinese medicine is so inexpensive, if you will. That's one of the reasons that become popular because it doesn't really make a lot of money, right? But it's a good benefit in a modest way, right? But of course, the modern medicine major mainstream, right? Okay, this is quite a digression, right? Let's come back, right? So we're going to have plenty of time to iteratively go through the small point, right? Now, this is where you can see that life, right? It kind of evolvement, right? But each step take a couple thousand years to go through, right? It's not from today. If you spend some time in archaeology, you might find online, right? You have medical, modern scientific ways to measure, right? Archaeologically, what is age, right? You don't have to believe me. I don't want to, put those numbers. Think this and that, right? You do your discovery if you want. Take a lot of time to develop this, right? Because it's original. It's not like copied, right? You can copy things quite quickly, right? So like AI part, for the US still quite kind of cutting edge, right, leading the way. But China still, except DeepSeek, pretty much the others are still copying, right? It's easier, right? But DeepSeek is getting to a lot of real innovation from 0 to 1, right? If you read the book, Peter Thiel, right? Raw, that's a good book, right? But what it means is that you really creative, right? You innovate, right? You invent something. It's original, right? That's what I Ching is about, right? And if you have that way of, you always try to not try to over invent, right? Not all the innovation is good. Not all the knowledge is good, right? And you really have to be aware of that. Right? Some of could be deleterious, really. Okay, so and not too sure what it is for. Oh, okay. This is just more illustration, right? This biology boundaries what computer is from, right? But believe it or not, it's been there for a while. So yeah, this is starts, right? Holographic nature of life, right? DNA and whatever. I want to do a bit of deep dive, right? And what are they, right? It's time, right? Again, it's ransom house, it's kind of different theories, diagnostic, different ways, functional. Again, pathology, the disruption of the flow, and then the sick, whatever that is, right? I just quickly go through that. It's another branch of thinking, systematic thinking, how things come together. Don't take it too on the surface, right? Because the translation is pretty bad, right? Yeah, the universal code of life, right? First quadrant is balance, dynamic tension. Obviously, number 2 on the left, the holographic part contains the whole. Yeah, like a fractal kind of thing, right? Fractals, right? Holographic, right? The part contains the whole. Okay, that's what DNA is from because we're doing that movement even a larger scale, right? That's the shape of these things from as well. Anyway, that's beyond the point. Just have fun, right? The motion, the circular ascent. That's in other words the lift, right? And descent, qi, right? I don't know, it's different ways, like lift and wall, as I put it. Any case, so this is less precise, but you could say that as traditional wall. It's already also very modern, right? Today they advanced a lot. They probably pay more attention. The AI and robotics is going to push the Western medicine, what we know now, to kind of the edge, right, very quickly. But on the other side, it's like a vast universe. I don't know whether you know whether you can find an edge, right? It's so vast, so extensive, right? Yeah. So really, it's a very cursory review. We need to do a lot of forensic medicine kind of research, right? To create a MaicroDoctor, the product, it's a workforce. It's not easy, right? We have to dance within the regulatory compliance. We also have to be scientifically sound. We also have to be aware that we really practice what we preach for benefit. Not try to just making a lot of money without benefiting people, right? Have to be really evidence, right? So we're gonna come back for more, right? One of the well, people don't really like the theory and statics, number, or those abstractions, right? But if you look at the other, the dreams of Red Chamber, right? It's very good illustration of Chinese medicine works, right? And how I Ching works as well, right? Again, I'm going to use that as some of the storytelling, right, to make sure that not so dry, okay? Some like a disease, like pathology, right? And the heaven, the great divorce, heaven versus man, whatever that is, right? It's quite a good story, right? The philosophy of usually, well, I think this kind of horrible interpretation, right? Again, it's a story, right? So from there, in a very, very fine detail, you're going to see how the Chinese medicine, the I Ching, is played out, right? It's pretty fascinating, really. I cannot play that movie for you because in Chinese, and if you speak Chinese, you might watch yourself, or you have watched yourself, right? And a lot of copyright, I cannot destroy it. But I will try to tell you the story. The book's been there for forever, right? A lot of many hundred years, right? So critique of the culture of success, oh, whatever that is, right? 3 pillars of wisdom. Oh, this is just to make fun, right? Final thought. And oh, okay. Can we find our way back to the? Oh, wow, it's kind of bizarre, right? The central metaphor: stones versus jade. Oh, there's 2 main characters. One is a girl called Dai Yu, the other, the boy called Bao Yu, right? Story about the love story in the there, right? In a garden, right? So Yu meaning jade, right? Yeah, that's what it is, right? Look at it, right? This jade is from the big stone there, right? So they have to make a story, right? Yeah, this is another illustration of what I try to put together, right? The 6-layer I Ching framework. This is style, kind of very industrial, right? Again, science, technology, engineering, operating system, application, device, or robotics, right? So you look at it, right? The elements, energy, silver, electricity, right? A representative, right? Infrastructure, the rails of money, like the highway, the space track, right? And the shape, charted roads on the sea, right? The money, right? How we function, the law, right? Chips and the cloud computing, local computing, engineering, right? The multimodal domain-specific models and machines, right? Macro brain, macro heart, where the agents and AI agents, macro pay, one of my products as well, and enterprise AI, AI applications, physical AI on the 6 devices, robotics, and so on. That's my major focus. MaicroDoctors belong there, right? Yeah, it's kind of yeah, it's good illustration, right? I don't like this style, but in any case, what T didn't get right is more transportation, like cars, the rockets and new spaceship, right? We eventually need that. Changing transportation is essential, right? Finance, right? And again, I'm building up the industrialization, reindustrialization, a new, whatever you call it, law, right? That's what left is right on the left, right? Left, okay? On the right is workforce, right? And the arms, and meaning like the weapons, whatever is kind of try to evoke your emotion, right? The risk, obviously, we have to navigate the fractures, right? Mitigate the risks. We need to do both. Right? That's why I put it together, right? Yeah, not sure. We can wrap it up here. We can talk next time, right? We need to touch the root, return to to make sure that we don't forget where we are from, where we should go to, right? When I do research and development, it's not purely just money driven, right? You have to have something that beyond that, the purpose, right? As I said, it's human, the ontology, and world, right? I'm going to explain more for sure, but it's navigate the pitfalls to avoid, right? So there are many different pros and risks, right? On the wireless part, right, the product major one is microbanker, right? So we're going to look at how the currency evolves. What's wrong with the current financial ecosystem? How we're going to transform it, right? And long story short, we're going to have a lot to talk, right? We've been through a lot of failures, right? No, not first time we come into a crisis, right? England, right, is very good at it, right? Newton, right, used to be the British Empire, but now it got into trouble, right? Look at the US, right? It's such a wonderful country, but again, it got into a lot of debts, right? Financial ecosystem still the best, right? But how can we really transform it for the age of AI, right? That's a big question, right? And you and me, we all have our responsibility, right? We have to get it right, right? The worlds and money and currency, the system need to be redefined, right? Or transformed drastically, if you want, right? Yeah, we look at France, right? A lot of licensed land, right? So any case, well, it's not just look through the history for fun, right? For design the business product, right? For the market to have the new financial ecosystem, right? You cannot just just sitting on a statistic, read a book about accounting, then you can do that. No, it's about human, right? You have to really touch the roots, right? Connect to the reality, because otherwise you can never really see what's wrong, right? Let alone you can transform or invent anything, right? But you can have grandiose vision, but you have to start with the product, right? The small change, right? It has to be working, right? In the real world, people have to agree to pay money out of the pocket, for whatever you want them to get benefit from, right? Yeah, the failure of the double standard. Well, yeah, we're in a world of double standard right now, right? When we design the product, right? When we start, say, touching a root, right? The actual deep down, right? These three things I'm going to mention a lot, right? The Confucianism, right? And the Taoism and Buddhism, right? I Ching obviously not mentioned here, but beyond this, right? So, yeah, you're going to hear a lot from me. For now, it's just really talking to myself, right? So, but again, once it makes sense, you will see the value, right? Hopefully, whoever has time to listen. This will be used when we define or design the product called the business ontology, right? Design the operation system, right? This is where it's rooted, right? So it's not just what you learn from Palantir, right? This is a product, right? It's not just a bragging kind of catchy phrase, right? It has to really, people must be willing to pay for it. It has to work. It has to deep root, right? It's business. It's not just for fun, right? It's not like reading a novel, right? You have a fancy story, play magic, That's not for that, right? But again, just to remind you, when I say go back to the roots, that's what I mean. Right? You really have to deep down, think through carefully, and make it a product, make it part of the business, right? The people are willing to pay money for, right? So that's what I mean. Okay, today we're gonna just wrap it up quickly, right? Yeah, we need to really get a real verdict in the market, right? Science of verification, right? We'll have to really verify, right? Yeah, maybe that's where we should rest our last thought for this episode, right? We're gonna see you next time. Okay. So the business operating system is how lift the wall. We want both, right? Obviously, right? And these are the layers that we've been through. We're gonna come back, right? Thank you.